Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am O'Brien McMahon, and this is People Business. In this episode, I am joined by Karl Staib. Karl is the founder of Systematic Leader. It is a business that helps other businesses improve the systems that they are building and operating in their day-to-day work and lives. He helps business leaders trade their fire extinguisher for a growth engine, designing customer experience systems that retain customers and ignite referrals. He is also the host of the Systemic Leader podcast. And we had gotten connected through a mutual friend and thought it might be fun to do kind of a joint podcast, have him on my show, and then construct it in such a way that he could also post it to his show. And so would encourage guests to go and check out his show if you like this conversation, talking all about systems. I am a nerd for systems, if you haven't gathered already listening to this show. So this was really a fun conversation. We really dive a lot into Karl's expertise, but I also share a lot about the systems that I use, both personally and professionally, and the way that I think about systems, building systems, starting systems from scratch, the difficulty of navigating your own psychology, all that great stuff. So ton in here. I hope it's helpful for you. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Here is Karl Staib with Systematic Leader. Karl, welcome to my show. I'm excited to be on your show as we've teed up in our respective introductions. You and I had gotten linked up through some mutual connections and thought it might be fun to do a dual episode where we share some thoughts on system thinking and the way that we are using that in our respective work and lives. And so here we are.
Yeah, I'm excited.
You have a show, Systematic Leader. You're big on systems thinking. Just to kick things off here, set the table for both audiences. What is systems thinking? How do you define it? And how did you get drawn to it?
Good question. Change requires understanding where things are going and then developing the systems so they support the habits to make the output consistent. And what I mean by that is no matter what happens inside of a company, organization, a solo business, if you have quality systems in place that you iterate on, that you improve, then what ends up happening is you get better output. And the more that you create systems that you know support the larger goals of what you're trying to accomplish, the more you're heading in the right direction. Often businesses are heading what they think they're heading in the right direction, but they don't have the leading indicators that allow the lagging indicators to match up. And so what ends up happening is you're like, why aren't we growing our email list? Or why aren't we getting more clients? Or why are people dropping off at this point on our website? Whatever it is, you have to understand what systems you have put in place. Like Charlie Munger likes to say, it's basically show me what the incentives are and I'll show you the results. And that is all systems. And then you make sure you design those systems so they support those results that you want.
And I think the big fallacy is anyone thinking that they don't have a system, right? The way we live our lives is a system. It might just be a chaotic system or an unorganized system, but it is a system, right? It's just the routines, practices, habits, rituals that we use every day. It's the way that we get things done. And somebody's system might be, I wing it from here to here. And another person's might be super rigid and disciplined, but at the end of the day, they're both systems.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we pretend, oh yeah, like I'm a creative and the universe tells me what to do. And that might be true, but you still have a system in place. Like you might need to go for a walk before you design something, or you might need to do a quick journaling exercise before you go on stage, or you might need to practice your speech before you go on stage. It's all systems that support what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. And so when did you first get turned on to this kind of systems thinking?
I've thought long and hard about this. My dad was German, and he was a tough German. And he had his own business, and electrical business, and his business was basically just a bunch of systems. And I learned how he set up his day. I learned how he executed on his day. I learned how he would follow through with billing. I saw it all. It was just open. I helped him in his business. I've worked for him. He passed away back in 2016, but that's probably one of the greatest gifts that he gave me, was that systematic thinking. And that's pretty much, podcast is named that. It's Systematic Leader for a reason, because the leaders that know what their systems are and they're clear on that vision and how they're executing are the ones that get great results. And the ones that are more chaotic, sometimes they get great results and sometimes they don't. And I think that's the big difference. And to me, it comes down to consistency. If you're consistent, you're going to get those results in the end.
Yeah. I feel like mine was more stumbled upon. I think for me, as I was starting out in my career, I realized very early on that if I was trying to keep things in my head, it was a disaster. And like I have friends who remember everybody's name. Like we all have that one friend who we met somebody once, and 2 years later, they're like, "Oh, John Smith from Loveland, Ohio. Yeah, he went to this high school and he did this thing." And you're like, how do you remember that? Yeah. And my brain is a sieve, unfortunately. And so I just realized early on that if I was going to be successful, like not in life, but just if I was going to be successful at the little tasks that I was trying to achieve, I needed something to keep me accountable and keep me organized. And so then I just started building tools for myself to really just make up for my own weaknesses. And over time, I just kept iterating those. And now I have people come up to me in my work. I've been working at Lockton, where I work as an insurance broker, for 16 and a half years now. Mm-hmm. And people come and they see the way that I run my business, and they're like, "Oh my God, your process is so crazy. And I could never run a system like that." And I'm like, I couldn't have either when I first started, but yeah, I've just iterated it over time. So my entry into this. I have a question
for you. What is one system that you think other brokers should steal from you?
So my non-answer to that question is, I think everybody's different, and I think everybody leaks in different ways. So here's how I think about it now is, if you are trying to achieve some kind of objective, whether it's personal or work, you're running a process now, whether you realize it or not. And so it's not about going back to the drawing board usually and totally redoing everything. I think it's more successful just to think, where am I leaking right now? Like either am I leaking sales opportunities? Where are they falling out the back end? Where am I leaking energy? Where am I leaking anxiety? Where am I leaking attention to detail? Whatever it is for you, what's like the thing that is causing the biggest problem today? And then what is the fix for that problem? And maybe it's a new tool. Maybe it's a new way of working, a new process for getting the work done, a new review or accountability buddy. Maybe you need to hire somebody. Like whatever it is, just figuring out what the easiest solve for that solution is. And then you just work that until it becomes habit and routine. And then inevitably you're going to be leaking somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And so you go find that next largest but slightly smaller leak, and you just fix that leak. And over time, I think you just can build a system for yourself. So like I always say,
you get less leaky as you go.
Yeah, but there will always be a leak somewhere, right? There's always something that is not as efficient as it could be. And I hesitate to give an answer. Every broker should be doing this, because I think we are all so different and approach things differently. What I think I would recommend to any broker out there is to stand up at a whiteboard or take out a sheet of paper and write down how you are doing your work today. Mm-hmm. Just everything from how are you opening the door initially to meet new people? How are you warming up relationships so that when they have a need, they think of you? How are you pitching during that sales process? When the sales process kicks off, how are you closing? How are you onboarding? What does client retention look like? What does it look like year 5, year 10? How are you interacting with your teams? I think mapping that out and just saying, what am I doing today? Even if you're winging it, just knowing that and being able to map out the whole workflow of your job and your responsibility, that gives you then the opportunity to go, oh, I'm leaking in these 3 areas.
Yep.
And so
it's funny that you say that, because that's a big part of what I do when I help people. We start with a customer journey map, and we share, because I think you're going to be leaking many areas. It could be accounting, it could be sales, but the idea is to really, for me, is map out that customer journey, and sales is part of that. But the idea is like each column, and then what are the different touch points or parts of your business that touches. And then you just look at the highlights. You don't focus on every little detail. Otherwise it would just take forever, but you focus on the top things in each area. And like you said, when you really dig in and it's just this ability to step back, look, see how everything's connected or not connected. And like you said, and you're like, okay, we're leaking in these areas. What can we do? And that's when it gets fun, because then it's, the creativity, especially when it's a team of people and everybody sees it differently. And then those discussions are so much fun, because they're like, hey, what if we tried this and this? That's when it, for me, is like, that lights me up.
I think human beings are better when we have something to react to. Like, it's fun to create, but ultimately no novel was published in its first draft. Right? Like, great novels are created by editing, and great anything is created by editing. And so being able to have that journey map, I think, just allows you to react to something and go, oh, okay, now I can clearly see that there's a connection here, or there's not a connection there, or we're stumbling in this area, or this area could be better. It's just, I think we're all better when we are reacting to something on paper, and just getting some first draft of that down just pays off in spades when you actually are sitting down to then figure out the improvements.
And it helps you prioritize. I feel like like you said, like, you can't put your thumbs in all the holes, but there is one that's leaking the most, that is reducing the value that you deliver for your clients or customers or whatever. And it's focusing on that first and then moving on to the next one.
Yeah. What are some best practices in creating a journey map?
I think one is just taking the time to step back and do it. 2 is not to get bogged down. There's a customer journey map, and then there's a service blueprint, are 2 of some of the main things that I do with clients. And the service blueprint is much more in depth. And sometimes I find it not as useful because it gets too much into the weeds, versus a customer journey map. It focuses on the customer, because then it's not, I think a lot of clients, that putting that lens inside and looking at what's broken inside your company versus, hey, how are we not serving our customer or client? It keeps that focus on the customer, and it allows the company to really say, okay, once we've got the first 30 days of onboarding locked down, it works. People love it. Great feedback. It's that 31 through 90 where we start to tail off because we get a little bit too complacent and comfortable. That's when you're like, oh, okay. And I love what you said about the 5-year and the 10-year mark, because a lot of people don't think about that. They're just like, okay, we get them onboarded, we make sure, and then they fall off. But those people that have been with you for 5-10 years should get just as much attention, because if you're doing it right, those are the people referring you. They're staying with you for a reason, and it's giving them more reasons to refer you to their friends and family.
And you need to find a way to keep it fresh for them so that they stick around.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that my business, when it was being set up, I take no credit for this. This was set up long before I got there, but the incentives around client retention. So as a salesperson there, I am incented to go drum up new business, but I am equally incented to keep that business for as long as we can possibly keep that business. And so I say all the time, like, I'm the one person on the team that 10 years from now is paranoid thinking, how are we going to keep this thing fresh and keep them from walking out the door? Like, the service team is focused on delivering great service to the clients, or the product team delivering a great product. But I'm the one sitting there going like, how is this fresh? Are we telling the right story? How do they feel? And having somebody with that sense of healthy paranoia, I think, is important.
Yeah, and it's a good point. It's got to be a healthy paranoia, because in the end, you can't do everything well. You can't be perfect, but you can. And this to me is a big part of this process of building systems, is taking time for gratitude, because in the end, like, there's always something more you could do. You could follow up more often. You could follow up instead of every 90 days, you could follow up every 60 days, whatever it is. But that might be too much. Like, the people don't need that. And so you're doing this extra thing, and talk about leaking energy. Like, you're doing this now every 60 days. So 6 times a year, and you're doing this, and you're trying to maybe send a card or whatever. And it ends up hurting you, because these people don't need that much attention. They maybe need even less attention, but they need it to be more caring and more empathetic versus, hey, hope you're well. If you need anything, let me know, which is much more robotic and not as joyful or intriguing to the people. And it's looking at that stuff. I find people should interview their customers more often. I worked with a client. They just didn't interview their customers. And I was like, okay, we need to build a system for this. So every quarter, we had somebody in the marketing department and the sales department, so they could collaborate. They would each interview one person of their customers. And the feedback that you get is so much more powerful than if you, and it's good to have surveys, but I find them, I don't know, 10% as effective as actual interviews. When you ask somebody, what's going well for you? What's not? There's just honesty that comes out that people don't do in a survey. People don't want to spend that time on a survey. But if you just say, hey, I would love just 20 minutes with you. I would like to help you have a better experience. And sometimes you have to pay them. And a lot of times they'll just do it because they're like, wait, you're trying to improve how you help me? Sure, I'll give you 20 minutes. But it's nice to send a gift after, even if they say you don't need to. But yeah, that is a powerful way to really help you with your systems and understanding what's going well in your business and what you can do better.
Yeah. I guess there's an interesting point there too around what do you do with the feedback when you get it? And I guess there are probably people out there who would love to be innovating and pushing change into their system, but the system is set up to be resistant to that. Mm-hmm. So do you have any advice for those people who are like, yeah, I would love to impact and affect change in my organization, but people are inherently opposed to change, and I run into a bunch of friction when I try to do that?
Yeah. I think it comes back to the why behind it, right? Like, why do you do what you do? And I think too often we forget that mission, that vision of why we show up to work every day. And I think if you're going to put a system in place and you're going to stick with it, because that's the key, right? You can be like, hey, let's interview employees or let's interview customers. You're the type of leader that often goes to a conference. And this has happened with a lot of people that I've worked with. Go to a conference, great idea. And then they have all this energy and they want to implement it. And then basically 6 months later, it stops becoming a part of their system. And that's where you really have to decide, okay, what are we as a company? Those core values, and how are we going to live those core values? So if one of them is great service, whatever generic core value that you want, but the idea is you have great service. That is very vital and important to your company. Okay, well, are you living that? And great service means listening to customers. And if we're going to do that, we're going to make this choice very consciously, and we're going to build a system to support that. And those are those leading indicators. If you're going to create a great service and that's a core value, what are you doing to support that? And I think that's where a lot of companies that lip service of, yeah, we believe in excellence. What do you do? What system do you have in place to support that people are being able to deliver excellence to your customers? And a lot of times maybe it used to happen, but that was like 5, 10 years ago. And now it's shifted and you've gotten off track. That's why having a system to come back around again and review that stuff and say, okay, yeah, we've gotten off track here. What can we do to get back on track?
Yeah. I think there's an element too, just back to the person who maybe doesn't have the authority to make big decisions, but wants to affect change. I was trying to think of where the reference for this came. I can't remember if it was like Seth Godin's blog or something like that, but I heard a story about somebody, some unnamed person in the government who had wound up like having a hand in all of these major policy decisions and all of these changes across red and blue presidencies. And they had just, if you look back at the things that this person had their hand in, it was like transformative issue after transformative issue for the United States for 40 years. And when somebody pointed that out and was like, how have you done this? The person responded, you can get a lot done if you don't need to take the credit for it. Yep. And I think that's interesting. There are and have been some things that I'm trying to affect in my business as we're moving forward. And I think a lot of businesses right now are adjusting in this world of AI and how are we going to meet the next moment and what is this going to turn into? And nobody really knows. And I think if you are going into it to get to the best outcome, not to get the credit for getting to the best outcome, you're much more likely to be successful.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where ego is maybe one of the biggest detriments to leaders, because they feel like they want people to see that their decisions mattered and that they made a positive impact. And it does, but you don't need everybody to realize. And I make this mistake still. Like my ego all of a sudden creeps in and I'm like, oh yeah, I need to know. This morning, my wife and I, we give a little Halloween gifts, and my son, we gave him a little light up football, my 10-year-old. And I'm like, oh, like this was a really cool find, like hint, hint, like I'm the one that found it. But then I was like, what am I doing? Like I'm trying to like fish for compliments with my 10-year-old son. And I do that with people I lead too. Oh yeah, good thing we thought of this. I won't say that I thought of it. And I'm fishing for these compliments. But when you realize that Ryan Holiday likes to say ego is the enemy, I don't think it's the enemy. I just think it needs to stay in check. There's nothing wrong with a healthy ego. It helps spur us into action. It helps us take on responsibility that maybe we weren't even ready for, but we take on that challenge. It's that self-awareness. And I think back to your point of, oh yeah, if I'm going to do this, it's not about everybody realizing how smart I am and how great I am. It's what is the outcome that we wanted, and are we reaching that outcome? And that in your heart then is what matters. And that is basically you doing the job and supporting people and not taking credit for it. And just in the background, just inside knowing, okay, yeah, I'm doing well. Like you don't need anybody to acknowledge that. You can do that for yourself.
Yeah. Have you ever read or heard of the book, The Status Game?
No.
It's a really interesting book, and it makes the argument that we are all primarily driven by status. We're all status seeking. And I went into it skeptical, and I was like, I don't know, like I get that we all want status and we all want to be thought of well and respected, but that's like the one thing that's driving all our decisions. I don't know about that. By the end of the book, I was like, yeah, we're all driven by status. Like this is just what it's all about. But I think one of the powers of recognizing that is not that we need to do away with it, but that we need to harness it for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And we get to define where we get status from.
Yep.
And so if we're looking at status as who has the most money, then it's out of our control to some extent, right? We're giving up power to whoever can accumulate the most assets. But if we instead think of status for ourselves, if we decide to play a status game around who helps others the most, now we get rewarded for entirely different behaviors.
Yep.
And so I think too many people are walking around not realizing the status games that they're playing and not being purposeful about the games that they want to play. And we'll all, to your point, like we all get sucked into games that we don't want to be playing or
Oh,
shouldn't
yeah.
be playing.
Yep.
I feel it too. I'm a salesperson in a sales driven organization. Like I look up at that board and see other people's performance and my ego flares up and my insecurity flares up, like just like anybody's would. But then to be able to say, that's not exactly the game that I'm playing. I'm playing the game a little bit differently. And here's how I want to play the game. As long as I'm meeting what the company wants me to meet and doing what I need to do, then I can also go out and play my own status game in my own way. So in turn, I can make the job what I want it to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think this is, to me, it's about widening your perspective of you can play in both areas, but it breaks the brain a little bit. But like I said, I don't think ego's like bad. It's just that self-awareness of, okay, yeah, I'm driving towards this. This is not a bad thing. If I drive towards this, making an extra 2 sales this month, part of that is ego. Cause yeah, you're like, I want to do better. I want to improve. But part of that is that when I do better, then I get a pay raise or I make more money or whatever it is. And we can't allow that to be the sole reason that we do something. And I think that to me is okay. Yeah, I can play a little bit in there, but I need to come back to that center. And I need to also play the game of I'm doing this to learn and grow. Like for me, that's where AI is so important. Like we know AI is going to be taking over more and more responsibility because we are lazy humans and we like to use as little energy. We are energy conservers, right? That's how we survived. We didn't overextend ourselves and get caught in the middle of the desert without any water or food. We always conserved. We always could make sure we could get back to the village. Or the cave or however you want to slice it. And I think that is really important because as we realize, okay, AI is going to be more and more a part of this. How can and I don't think I answered your earlier question of how do you gather all this customer information? AI is a great tool for that, right? That's a big part. So whenever I interview people on behalf of a client, I gather that, I take those notes, I use AI to help me transcribe it. I upload that to talking about conserving energy. I save tens of 20 hours on these type of interviews and synthesis because I use AI to help me filter through what are the themes, what are the highlights, what are the quotes, because it needs to all tie together. And then you need to figure out, once again, that priority of, okay, we're leaking the most here, and understanding that and saying, okay, this is not about me. It's not about, can I do all the work? Do I know how to synthesize through this? It's leveraging these tools, leveraging other people. Because if you're in an organization, you don't need to synthesize through all that. You can have AI, you can have other people look at it, get their perspective. And then you can, as a team, say, okay, yeah, this is where we're faltering. What are the ideas around this? And once you realize as a leader, you don't need to come up with the idea. And if somebody else does and you can praise them for it, that to me that's a win-win across the board because now this other person gets credit. Yeah, ego takes a hit because you didn't come up with the idea. And I think a lot of leaders struggle in this area. But once you realize, oh, like I'm just there to help and guide, coming back to the hero's journey, and you can gain satisfaction from somebody else coming up with a great idea, that's when you start winning because it's not about you doing it, it's about the team doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. The more you can program your mind to reward itself for team wins instead of necessarily individual wins.
Yeah.
But I've interviewed on this show several special operations veterans from all different branches of the military, and several of them have talked about confidence and humility and the importance of having both at a high level. Having put in the work and the training to walk into an environment with really high confidence, and to be able to have just an unbreakable confidence in yourself when performance is on the line, but then also having the humility after that performance to recognize that nobody is perfect and we can all continue to learn and get better and have a growth mindset, and to pick apart that performance to find ways that it could have been better, train up on those ways, put new systems or processes or behaviors in place so that the next time you go out, you're even more confident the next time because you've shored that up. And then that cycle just continues. And so it's not about being only humble or being only confident. We often think, oh, he's so confident. We talk about confidence and cockiness, right? Nobody wants to be cocky, but we want to be really confident in what we do. There's a fine line between them. But I think it's when you also have a really high level of humility. That's what leads to high performance. It's also what leads to an element of like charisma and attraction to another person. If somebody has a really high level of confidence, but also demonstrates a really high level of humility, like we are attracted to that person, whether it's physically attracted to them or we want to do business with them. Like we like people who can maintain that dichotomy.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think it comes back to systems once again, because how do you do that? You've got to practice. No one is good at being humble or confident right away. It's a balance, right? It's understanding where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and then how to lean in and navigate those. And I think, I had a fantastic boss. His name was Caleb, and he was one of my mentors. And he told me he had a system for appreciating others. Throughout the week, he would jot down things that he saw and the behaviors he wanted to see more of. So this is not just, hey, you did a great job at this. It's appreciating people for the things that they've done well, but it also helps build a better team, a better results. Part of it is selfish too, but it's done in a balanced way of, yeah, they did do a great job. This is what we asked them to do, and they knocked it out of the park. And so throughout the week, instead of on Fridays, hey, I'm going to tell everybody how much I appreciate them and do a generic like, hey, great job this week. Thanks for all your hard work, which is nice. But then when you take it at an extra level, and this mentor of mine, he would look at his list and he would text or Slack or email or whatever it was. And he would say, hey, Melissa, I love this report on this second slide. I love the visuals. It really helped tell the story and it helped us get this client. Great job. Thank you. And that extra little detail, man, made his team hum. Like they were just fantastic. They appreciated each other because he mirrored and showed the standard that he had for his team. And that to me is a system like a lot of leaders should use, because it's, if you do this and you appreciate people and you appreciate the things that they're doing well and you want them to do more of, they're going to do more of it. You just need to have a system in place to be able to make it happen.
So how did he systematize that?
He would journal. So every day, at the end of the day, he'd be like, okay, what did Melissa do well today? What did Tom do well today? What did Jack do well? And he just went down that list every day for 15 minutes. Sometimes it'd be 5. Maybe he was out of the office and didn't know too much going on. But it was that system of every day he would do it at the same time at the end of the day. And he would just capture what he could remember, what he did notice. He'd go maybe even through his emails to help jog his memory a little bit. And then on Thursday afternoons, he would send out the little appreciation to his team.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that makes a good point too, which is like, you can have a system for anything.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this in preparation for this conversation, and I was writing down some of the things that I have systems for. And it's like, yes, I have a system for my business and for sales and for client retention and that kind of a thing. I also have a system for how we prep finalist presentations for pitches. I also have a system for my fitness and how I work out. Like I know when I do it, I know how often I do it. I know what those workouts are going to look like. I even have a system for reading and retention of good books. So I will go through nonfiction with a pen or pencil and make notes as I go. And then if I really like the book, I will create a study guide for myself where I go through the major points so that it just helps me with retention. And then I actually have another document that is frameworks. And if a book has a particular framework that I think is especially effective, I will take that framework and categorize it on that document. So I think the Word doc is 20 pages long right now. And it's got leadership, sales, health, all these different frameworks on there. And so anytime I'm struggling with a problem, I can go in there, creativity frameworks, innovation frameworks, things like that. And I go in there and be like, okay, what have I read that I want to go back to that I want to actually use and put into practice in some of these situations? And so like that right there, a system for reading. And it's like, most people don't have a system for reading.
Yeah, exactly. And you were like, yeah, I want to retain this. I want to be able to use this again later. And this is going to help me because you just said your brain is a sieve and needs a little bit more support.
Yeah.
And to your point, not everybody needs to do it in that way. But what it could be is at the end of a book, okay, what are 3 ways I can apply this information? It's a different tactic, but now you might have a little more trouble with ideating and saying, how could I actually apply this? And then if you do that at the end of every book, you're going to come up with amazing ideas every time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a good point there too, which is you don't have to overcomplicate your systems either. Your system could just be at the end of every book, I write 3 things on the last page that I'm going to do with that book.
Yeah.
That could be the whole system.
Yep.
So
exactly.
How do you in your own life know when it is time to cut something out of a system?
When it's not delivering the value that it should. And coming back to the customer journey map, right? If you are reaching out every 60 days and you don't see any uptick in retention, you don't see any uptick in positive emails coming back to you, you're like, okay, what if we didn't do it this way? And this is that constant improvement that is really important as you are developing your systems. So as you develop a new system, you have to think of it as designing that system, because I think too often we put a system in place because we saw our parent do it that way, or we saw a past boss do it that way. And you're like, it worked for them. Great. Now we got AI. So we don't need to be doing that way anymore.
We don't need manual entry anymore.
Yeah, we don't need manual entry. We don't need a note taker in meetings anymore. We got AI to do that. It's then saying, okay, yeah, is this system still helping us? And I think that to me is you should at least review your systems at least once a year, sometimes more every quarter if it depends on the type of thing that you're doing. If it's a project based, you should probably, okay, yeah, is this working for this type of project or for this client? And then once it gets going, yeah, you don't need to do it as often. And I think that's an important aspect of this is I'm not going to review my notes for my employee that I've had for 10 years every week. You might do that for new hires for the first 6 months because you're like, okay, I really need to make sure that I give them feedback and make sure they know that. But once they get up to speed, you don't need to do it as much. And so that is just adjusting your systems as you go. And I think that's important to be able to say, okay, yeah, let's do it this way. Okay, yeah, this is broken. I think everybody should have core values as a team, and you should revisit those core values. Okay, does this still make sense? One of your core values might not be as important, but now we have something else that is really important. And now you make some adjustments as you go. And what it also does is that the people in the organization also realize this isn't set it and forget it, because that's how you rest on your laurels. And that's how competition starts eating away at you because you stopped innovating. You stopped coming up with new ideas and new ways to tackle situations.
Yeah. That is one of the truths of life is like, it is relentless.
It burns you out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is both empowering and daunting because on the one hand, you can put the effort in and create just about anything you want to create. Look at what humanity has done, right? And look at all the different jobs that are out there and inventions that are out there. If you have an idea or if you want to go become something, you can go become something. At the same time, it's going to take a ton of work and effort and pain and struggle. And that is never going to stop, because as soon as you stop, entropy kicks in and other competitors start getting ahead of you. And so it is this weird balance where it's both empowering and exhausting.
Yeah. And it comes back to perspective. You can look at that as a bad thing within your company or within a system, or you can lean into it and think, oh, no, this is a part of our system. We can use this to our advantage and we can embrace it. And when you do, that's when you're like, oh, okay, let's review these things. Okay, is this still working for us? Is this not? And building those systems it can save a company so much money. You stop doing those things that don't work as well. You tweak the things that are working well and then make them even better. So it's that Pareto principle rule. 20% of your energy gives you 80% of your results. If every year you're doubling down on that 20%, of course you're going to improve. And of course you're going to do better. But you have to make the time for that. And you got to make the time to improve those systems.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And it just goes back to the importance of having a purposeful system, I think, because if your system does not include reflection, odds are reflection's not happening, or it's only going to happen when you think of it, which will not be on a regular enough basis to be effective.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think too is if you don't make that time to slow down and reflect, you also not just improving things, but you also don't get to celebrate what is working. Because that to me that's what a good celebration is, like anything, like a birthday just helps you realize, like, man, how much I've accomplished over the past year. It helps you slow down and appreciate. Now, some people might look at it as, oh, I'm getting older and more tired, but it's just perspective then, right? You have to decide. And same thing with teams. If you have those retrospectives built in, sometimes it's every 2 weeks, like Agile. Sometimes it's once a month. Sometimes it's quarterly. If you have a team of 5 other people, it doesn't make sense to do them every 2 weeks. It's just too often. So you have to find that balance, what works well for your team and their personalities, and then build systems around that.
So I mentioned my reading system. Do you have any systems that might surprise people?
Yeah, I think I've struggled with my confidence because I think you can always find things you do wrong. Like that inner voice inside my head is sometimes so much more detrimental. Talk about being humble. My inner voice keeps me humble on a daily basis. And I have to offset it. So I've realized my patterns, right? Of, okay, I notice all the things I do wrong. I need to start to do a better job of noticing the things I do right or do well. And so throughout the day, I journal. I try to usually do it around lunch and the end of the day, and sometimes before bed. But I'll try to open up my journal and I'll write down things I did well that day. And man, that has done wonders for my outlook, my energy, because I'm like, oh yeah, I did do that today. Like I've done a lot of things well, but you just move on to the next thing. And when I break that cycle, and usually it's around 4:30, depending, sometimes I might be busy, but it's right around 4:30 when I'm like, oh yeah, what did I do well today? And I can easily list 3 things. It's usually, I try to at least do 3. Sometimes it goes to 4 or 5 because I'm like, oh yeah, like I interviewed that person, or, oh yeah, I worked with that client and we came up with this idea. Little things like that that add up. And I'm like, it has really helped build my confidence and has helped me offset that negative inner voice.
Yeah, I love that. A system for building your own confidence up. Again, that goes back to my earlier point of where are you leaking? You leak confidence sometimes if left to your own devices. So let's build a system to solve that leak. And I think I appreciate the vulnerability in that admission too, because I think we are all going through some version of that. I think a lot of people lack confidence. So I think it directly helps, but I think we're all feeling that in some way, like there's something we're insecure about, and to think that we can create some kind of system for ourselves to shore up those areas, I think is empowering.
Yeah. And it just requires that back to self-reflection of, oh yeah, like I'm too tough on myself. Okay, what would help me in this area? And that's one of the things I've developed. And I think as a leader, you need to do that. Some people are great at sharing gratitude with their employees. It comes naturally to them. And then there's a lot that don't. And if it comes naturally to you, you don't need to do more of it. You need to focus on other leaking areas. And that's just knowing yourself, noticing those patterns, reflecting, at the end of every day too. I also ask myself what I could do better. And that's, to me, it's, oh yeah, okay. I do 3 things of what can I do well, but what can I do a little bit better the next day? But that just helps me stay creative, stay fresh, and then try to get a little bit better. I like the old James Clear. I don't think he came up with it, but the idea is improving by 1% every day. And I think that's even a stretch. I think it's like just 1% of a small sliver of an area that you're trying to improve in. And if you do that every day, you do get better. And that's the thing, is
Amen.
giving yourself that grace and just appreciating how far you've come versus where you haven't been yet.
Yeah. The reality is, if it's 1% or 5% or 0.5%, it doesn't matter. If you're waking up every day and you're a little bit better than you were at something the day before, you're moving in the right direction. And like that will compound over time. Behaviors compound just like money compounds. Was it Warren Buffett who said compounding is the most powerful force in the universe?
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, okay, if I'm going to put energy into this, what's going to give me my best return on my investment? Talk about investments of stocks or whatever, but then also in yourself, like taking that time to invest in yourself, reading books, journaling, having mentors, all that stuff is so powerful.
Yeah. So I've had this conversation. I don't know if I've had it on here before, but I was talking with somebody the other day. We were talking about starting things and how hard it is to start things. And I'm somebody who has gone to the gym 4 days a week for almost 20 years now. And it's just like, that was the system I created. I knew that if I created that system early for myself, then it would just become part of my identity. And then I would just like not have to worry about it when I got older. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, that is proving to be true. It's just become part of my identity and status for myself. I go to the gym in the morning. Like I did a 45-minute Peloton workout this morning, and like I get that endorphin high afterwards, and I feel good about myself and my head clears. But if you've not gone to the gym in the last 3 years and you go get on a 45-minute Peloton tonight, like it's going to be painful. Yeah. And it's going to hurt, and you're not going to get the endorphin kick at the end. That's not to say that you shouldn't get on that Peloton. You absolutely should. But when you are starting anything new, I feel like you have to recognize that. You have to take that beginner mindset and the willingness to suffer through the discomfort of early action at anything. Because if you do anything long enough and get proficient enough, you will enjoy it. I've had the experience where I remember watching professional soccer, like European football. And I was like, I don't understand. It's a slow game. They only score like 1, maybe 2 goals a game. I was like, this is just not that exciting. And then I wound up having a roommate in college who was a rabid fan. And I learned a ton about the game and the strategy and the techniques. Now I can watch a game and really enjoy it. And so I think that's the same with habits and any kind of different behavior. Like I remember running was like the worst thing I ever could do, was just like go out for a run. No way. But then as soon as I could run 2 miles, running was okay. Mm. And there's these thresholds we need to break through. And so I feel like anytime we are putting a new element into our system, it's like going on the Peloton for the first time in 3 years. It's going to be hard and it's going to be clunky, but I think we just need to embrace that. And it's about showing up continuously, about just stacking days. If you fall off for a day, that's fine. Get back on, just keep going. It's just about creating momentum in the early phase until it becomes part of your identity.
Yeah. I think Jerry Seinfeld talks about a lot about this. And he basically was like, I'm going to write a joke every single day.
Yes.
And that would be his mission is at least one joke. Often he probably write 8 or 10 jokes. The idea is starting small, right? You can't, like you said, you can't jump on the Peloton or go for a 8-mile run right off the bat. But I'm curious though, is what helped you? I'm guessing there's some sort of reflection or some sort of system that you put in place to help you realize, oh, this is helping me. I need to keep doing more of it. Do you have something like that in place?
I do now. I journal now and I work with a coach. And so I'm on at least not on a daily basis because I don't write every day, but several times a week I'm journaling, and once a week I'm reflecting back with my coach, trying to find ways to improve various aspects of my life. But I think I've told this story on my show before. I also think I lucked into this realization that if you put the work in and apply yourself, that good things will happen. And it goes back to when I was in college, I was thinking about becoming a business major. And then I walked through the communications building and they had a TV studio, like the director studio with a bunch of different TV screens and the switchboard, like, oh, take camera 1, take camera 3, zoom in, zoom out. And I was like, wait a minute. If I major in communications, do I get to use that? And they were like, yeah, we have all these courses on film production and TV production and radio production. And I was like, yeah, I'm in, let's do that. And I had no idea where it was going to go. My dad was like, don't you want to be a business major? And I thought like maybe I needed to be, but I wound up so engaged in my classes. Like I was the one who would stay after the teacher was like, you have to get out. The next class is here and we have to start. Because I would just ask questions because I was so curious and I loved it so much. And it just taught me that going after things that I want, that I have that little ember of interest in, can actually, one, there's really nothing getting in the way. And two, if I do it and commit to it, I can actually get decent at that thing. And so I've just seen that play out over and over in my life. It played out even earlier where I started playing hockey late. I was in 6th grade. Most people start when they're in 1st grade, if they want to be any good at all. I was the worst kid on the 3rd line, the last line. I was literally just like the worst kid on the team, but I loved it. And I went to a camp over the summer, and the next year I was the best kid on the 2nd line. And then by the end of that season, I was on the 1st line. And then the next year I tried out for the travel team and I was the alternate on the travel B team. But by the end of the year, I was a starter. And the next year I was the alternate on the travel A team. And it just showed me that if I really liked something and I really worked at something, that I could get better at it. And once I realized how much better I had gotten at hockey and how much I enjoyed the college experience more than some of my friends did, I got into the sort of quote unquote real world. And I was like, what else is there? And that sort of built, okay, well, if I can find things I'm passionate about and put some kind of system in place to get myself going, I can do whatever I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's great. I love that.
Yeah. I know we are coming to the end of our time here. Anything that you think about systems or things that you've pulled from your podcast that we've not talked about?
No, but I think it's important to reiterate the importance of stepping back and looking at how your systems connect. And that's back to your point of mapping it out. And we talked about a customer journey map. Just step back and look how everything's connected and take time to do that at least once a year, because you're going to find things that aren't working as well as they used to, broken, could be improved. You can double down in some other areas. I think doing that is such an important exercise. And it shows the people in the company that you're not just here to do the minimum. You're here to improve every single day. And you have to set that standard inside your company.
Yeah. And I would say the last thing that I will add is it's probably going to be most effective in the area you least want to do it.
Yep.
That's probably where
you struggle. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the thing you struggle with that you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. That's probably the best place to start.
And that's where the systems come into play, and not, it's back to your point, not being able to jog for 8 miles or on the Peloton for 40 minutes. It's this small little system that gets you going for 5 minutes, gets you going a half a mile, right? and you just do it and it becomes a part of your systems and your routine, that's when you're like, oh, okay, this is working. Like customers are happier. They're coming back more. They're referring us more. And it's that will pay off. And that's what's going to help motivate you, because you're like, oh yeah, doing this is actually working for us.
Yeah. Karl, this is a ton of fun. I hope the people who are listening to this enjoy these conversations as much as I do. And just thank you for the collaboration here.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And yeah, if people want to learn more about building systems in their business, they can go to podcast Systematic Leader. It's all over Apple and Spotify. I have a YouTube channel, which I'm trying to put more on there. And they can go to my website, systematicleader.co.
Fantastic. All right, everybody. Good luck building and adjusting your own systems. Hope it helps your life, your work, and anything else you're trying to achieve.
Yes.
Hey folks, one last thing before you go. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to hit subscribe so you can stay up to date with future guests. That's it. Thanks for coming. Go make the most of your business and the people in it.